The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. But where your heart is not, your feet cannot go. However, when the burden is shared, the heavy load becomes light. Who will hear the cry? Who will hear the call? Who will go? Panessa Seal is the CEO and founder of the Balm in Gilead, an NGO based in New York City.
We have a major crisis in our community, and I don't know what to do to get people to understand that we are in a race for our lives.
The Balm in Gilead has worked with thousands of African-American churches, developing strategies for fighting AIDS and the stigma associated with the disease.
Panessa Seal is a very courageous woman who has called the black church to conscience, as someone who's allowed herself to be used of God, a catalyst for helping people to think through theologically what would God have us to do in this situation.
We have churches now in this country who started with prayer, but today they have bought the building down the block. They're providing housing for people with HIV. They've changed their basement from a basement just bare to a clinic. You know, churches are now doing some extraordinary things around HIV, but it started with prayer.
Our job, as was the job of the prophets of old, is to stand up and tell it. Now, the folk didn't like it when Jeremiah told it. The folk didn't like it when Isaiah told it. They didn't like a lot of what Malachi said. But the prophet stood and proclaimed the word. And that is what we must do. One reason the church doesn't talk about it is because it's hard to talk about.
The Balm in Gilead's success and credibility are some of the reasons many believe it can become a bridge builder and help bring much-needed resources to the African continent.
I feel that we are a part of Africa and we need to be involved on the continent. HIV and AIDS has affected black people around the world in a similar fashion. And so we see the connectedness, unfortunately, through this particular condition.
Helping heal a hurting continent is why the Balm in Gilead is joining hands together with African faith community leaders in Côte d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, and Zimbabwe, nations that each have a significant number of people infected and affected by HIV and AIDS. Except for slavery, nothing in history has taken the lives of so many black people in such a short period of time. As a result of HIV and AIDS, things indeed are falling apart in many parts of Africa. Constantly, we are confronted by alarming statistics that keep increasing with every passing year, mind-boggling numbers in the millions. But let's just stop for a moment and recognize that these cold statistics represent real people. Actually, someone's father, mother, husband, wife, brother, sister, or friend. Men and women who were once the hope and future of their communities. Children once destined for great things, who now lie in shallow graves. With little or no community resources, these are challenges that Africa's faith community has to fight against every single day.
I believe that it is a myth that faith communities don't want to be involved with HIV. All that I have seen with bishops and imams, they want to address the seriousness of their people. But what they lack is resources.
While considerably more resources have come into Africa today than at any other time before, some say very little of it is making an impact where people are. According to Bishop Nyatuka, until the Balm in Gilead came knocking on his door, he was unaware of any AIDS-related projects in his community.
There is no single billboard talking about AIDS or about HIV/AIDS in this place called Eastlands. And this is where most of the people of Kayole live. This Eastlands has got more population than 2 million people. Kayole alone as an estate has got almost 500,000 people. But walk around all of the place, you will never see an NGO office for AIDS. You will never see a billboard for AIDS. Until recently when Balm and Gilead came from US, and then they came and introduced the program in our church, I could be able to say it is the first HIV program in this area.
The focus of the Balm and Gilead's Africa HIV/AIDS initiative is to build the capacity of Africa's faith community to address HIV and AIDS.
Black people are a spiritual people wherever they are in the world. So I think that that's one of the things that we have in common that we have not lost. It plays a critical role in not only the disease, but in life itself. The prayer for the healing of AIDS is very, very important. It's the way we've connected with people in our communities in the U.S., and it's the way that we're connecting with people here in Africa. They understand when we talk about prayer. They understand when we talk about spirituality. And it's through that vehicle that we have come together and have eliminated the distance that we've had for the hundreds of years that we have been separated from the continent.
While Africa is a continent of different religions, especially Christianity and Islam, there is one thing both faith communities have in common. Each has been equally devastated by the scourge of AIDS.
People are dying, and the disease does not ask, are you a Christian? Are you a Muslim? Do you believe in God? That's not a question the disease cares about.
Africa's faith community is all too aware of the critical role spirituality can play in the fight against the AIDS pandemic. It knows that faith will help millions live through and beyond the Holocaust.
The church will always be with the people. That is part of the training we do in order to reach out to those so that they accept the reality and have peace in their mind.
Undoubtedly, it is very important for religious organizations to be very much involved. To start with, faith organizations are closest to the people.
We leave this work to, say, the government alone, we will not succeed. But I'm sure if we all cooperate, plus the church, I'm sure some success will be registered.
The church must embrace it. The church must mobilize itself, must mobilize every resource at her disposal and plunge into this battle against AIDS. Because to drive out AIDS from the African continent is a task that must be done.
I believe that the fight against HIV/AIDS in Africa is winnable. But I also believe that in order to win the fight against HIV/AIDS in Africa, the world is going to have to give back to Africa. Africa, the gold, the silver, the diamonds, the ebony wood, the teak wood, the rubber plants, the world has taken from Africa. The world has been built on the backs of Africa. If Africa was reaping benefits from all of its diamonds and golds and silver, we would not be talking about the cost of treatment in Africa. We wouldn't be talking about poverty in Africa.
To ignore this calling would be a major tragedy for the African American community, for the African continent. We must break the silence and speak so that people's lives can be saved.
Yes, there is balm in Gilead.